Ready to the Working Group Chairs Forum at IETF 99. Next slide. This has transitioned over time. It's now on MeetEcho. It's now an official part of the agenda. So I am officially also putting up the note well because we are still in the IETF. But the intention is still for this to be a Working Group Chairs discussion forum type of thing. Next slide. Our agenda for today. Heather is going to provide us an update on the RFC format project. Greg is going to talk to us a little bit about IETF comms and in particular the website. I am going to talk about this particular forum and where we want to go with it, and then it'll be our standard open forum. So with no further ado, Heather. Yeah. Do you trust it to actually work? Yeah, she brought her own clicker.
I bring all sorts of stuff. My whole office is in that bag. Hi, I'm Heather Flanagan. I'm the RFC series editor. I have a very important question for you all. How many of you know that I'm actually working on changing the RFC format?
Oh my God!
Yay! So the first time I came to a Working Group Chairs lunch was about 2 years into the project, and there were folks that still had no idea I was changing anything and started to lecture me on the needs for things like SVG and non-ASCII characters, and I smile and nod and go, yeah, you think? So great. The reason I'm presenting again today is because it's becoming less than vaporware and a fine idea in my own head. We actually have tools, not all the tools, and these are things that are still requiring some testing, and I hope that you all will be able to help with that. So what we're going to talk about, with a really annoying flicker, a little bit about the project status, what tools are sort of in use, what tools are in testing, other things that we're looking at, and then the overall course of the project. So the first tool I want to talk about is ID to XML. This converts recently formed plain text internet drafts, or RFCs, into XML v2. If you want to create a BIS document, this can be, that doesn't actually have an XML file, this can be really, really useful. We expect it to produce parsable, well-formed XML, but it's never going to be 100% perfect or your money back. That's okay. We just want to get it most of the way there. This was not free, no. But we don't want all of Henrik's attention to be on this particular thing as much as we want other things. And Henrik walks in, excellent timing. So the source code is available at the link at the bottom of the page. It's also available if you're more used to working through the web interface. The XML to RFC experimental page has this, as well as the some of the work going on in the V2 to V3 converter. So XML to RFC version 2.7.0. If any of you read the release notes, you'll see that this particular version of XML to RFC does V2 to V3 conversion. Takes the RFC 7749 compliant XML and writes actual 7991 compliant XML. We're pretty sure it does. Testing is a little on the challenging side because of course there's nothing that consumes V3 at this point in time. We're talking about the ongoing list of tools that will make V3 a reality, and we're talking about shifting things around a little bit so that we at least have something that can consume this and enable testing. There is, I think, one tool set out in the community put together by Julian Reschke that can do some of this work, consume V3, spit out V3 output, which is great, but for solid testing, of course, you need more than that. You need more than just this one example. So persistence and creativity are definitely appreciated. I do have at least one person that's starting to look at this. It's a bit mind-numbing staring at the XML, but anything one can do is greatly appreciated. This isn't a tool per se. This is more of a the implication of a change. So we've talked about allowing non-ASCII characters in a very prescribed sense. What that actually means.
Yep, go on.
Keep going.
All these slides are already posted. I finished them for the most part last week, so you can always look them up. They're actually on the agenda page, so they're out there. So one of the things we thought is if we started taking examples now of internet drafts with non-ASCII characters and sending it through the RFC Production Center's existing tool set, we would see, okay, what do we already have that needs to change? And there is quite a bit. The database itself needs to change. When it was originally configured as a Latin 1 database, well, that's not going to work with UTF-8 characters. So we're talking ground floor on up in terms of the changes that have to happen. There are a couple of tools that are used today that are fundamentally necessary for producing RFCs that will have to be, if we want to publish anything with non-ASCII characters right now, these tools will have to be updated and then thrown away because they're not going to be used in the V3 world. So that's one of them is the NROF to text converter, because we're not going to be dealing with NROF anymore. And the other one is the text to PDF, given some of the libraries it uses to get there from here. We're talking about how important is that to get some of these documents published as they are, these documents being one of the HTTP BIS documents, as well as the Précis drafts. The Précis drafts are particularly near and dear to my heart, given that they're kind of why I think the non-ASCII character stuff is just so fundamentally critical to the RFC series and moving forward. Getting author names right is important. Getting the actual technical standard itself and spec readable is really kind of, I think, a useful thing for us to be able to do. And those drafts are, I believe, in last call right now. So the sooner I'll be able to publish non-ASCII characters, the happier I'll be. We did have some questions about, there are other checkers that are used, the MIB checker, Yang checker, ABNF. Found out this week that the MIB checker will be fine because, well, you can't use non-ASCII characters there anyway. The Yang checker is compliant, no problem. ABNF, that's going to need some work. I don't know how many people have gone up to Bill Fenner and said, so, Bill, about this ABNF checker, an associated document this week. And he's like, wait, no, that was 15 years ago. Stop. But I think enough people have started poking at him that those brain cells are starting to come to the fore, and we'll see some changes on that one. The SVG checker, I don't have that available for testing yet. Sean Leonard is the one behind that, and we hope to have something ready for IETF 100. I've heard tell that there are some working groups that have SVG files that they are ready, willing, and able to start throwing at this when we have it. If your working group is even thinking about this, that's really good, because we're going to need those files and we're going to need people to test them through the checker to make sure that what you want to have is actually supported in the SVG profile that we're going to be using. There are more tools on the list. If you remember the first slide that actually had content, it has the tools wiki that gives you sort of the rough outline of plan of what tools we're having and in what order, roughly what range of dates we expect to have them available. So that includes this list of, well, what are the other tools that we're talking about? Rewriting ID nits, actually getting those PDF A3 and HTML outputs, as well as the new text output, doing a kind of diff comparison and sanity checking with RFC lint, the SVG checker, taking that ID to XML. As I said, now it spits out V2. It will need to be updated to do V3. That made logical sense under the cover, so it's not as crazy as you might think. So that's where things stand. Definitely will need community assistance. The RFC Production Center are known to be detailed-oriented folks. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get through some of the drafts that you all send us. But this is a lot to be tested. You have far more use cases than actually end up submitted to us. We need your help in the testing as these things come along. There is a mailing list that has been revived to focus purely on V3 tool testing. That's the XML to RFC dev list. I think the last time that list was actually used was like in 2013 or 2014 or something like that. I'd sent a note to the list saying we're about to revive it, which I'm sure surprised any number of people who said, wait, oh my God, I'm still on this list. But the list is open for your subscription. If you want to sit in, lurk, chime in, it's always very much appreciated. And just for reference, I don't expect you to read that, but it's in the slides for you later. If you want to just double check what RFCs are we even talking about that define the format, this is the list. Obviously, it's not a small list, and the design team that put it together did an epic job in thinking all it through. And just about, no, not just about, pretty much every one of those documents has to go through a BIS process, because this is what we think was supposed to be, and then we're going to see what reality does to our beautiful shining ivory tower, and then fix the documents to match reality. So that's what's happening with RFC format these days. Does anyone have questions for me? Or maybe for Henrik, because I might need his help.
David Black, first, Heather, thanks for all your hard work. And at the risk of making more, after you get this under control, is anyone thinking about tracking the upstream tool chains that are being used to generate the XML that you're going to be busily processing? A lot of these are community maintained. I mean, things like Markdown tools or XML mine. And it's not so much that we'd expect you to do that, but if somebody could track sort of the state of those tools across the V2 to V3 migration, that would be incredibly helpful.
I know at least some of the authors of those tools, like Karsten Borman, he is actively aware of this. And while he's come up to me this week and said, I can't work on it today, I said, can you work on it next week? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's not so much motivating people. I'm sure people motivate, just as part of this somewhere, a place simply track. Which one of these external tools are where in terms of being able to generate V3 XML? Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Happy to help testing cram down, so it was +1.
Awesome sauce. Thanks.
Hi. So I had a question. I noticed in the your RFC about the use of UTF-8 or Unicode in RFCs, the text version did not include any Unicode. Is that a limitation of the current tools, or is that the intent? Okay, so the intention is eventually the text versions would also be UTF-8, just you can't do that yet?
Right.
Okay.
That was I had a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem with that draft. Okay. How to describe the thing that we're not allowed to do.
Yes.
So for what it's worth, there is a PDF that I generated. It's not perfect because I can't get the darn bitty characters lined up correctly, but for the most part, it actually has the content and it's readable, but the text, yeah, we can't do that yet.
Paul Wouters. I just tried to package ID to XML for Fedora, and there's a bug in that the man page installs in user local instead of in user. So if you can fix that.
Henrik, where do you want them to post that kind of stuff?
I didn't get that.
Henrik Lefkowitz. If there are bug reports against XML to RFC, there is a issue tracker. If you go to tools.itf.org/tools/XML to RFC, you should be able to find it.
And if they want to submit bugs against ID to XML?
So I placed that under the other tools tracker that tracks data tracker. But it's probably more appropriate to also file those in the XML to RFC tracker. Okay. I think that's going to be more intuitive. I'll add a component for ID2 XML.
Okay. Any other questions for me?
If we were to be planning a draft that we really would like to use SVC or names, can you give us a time frame when you think we might be able to do that so that we know what kind of workarounds we might need depending on when we think these drafts are coming out?
In terms of starting up a draft, I know people that are doing that right now. With the SVG in it. They may, I don't know necessarily, some of them are doing that, storing them on GitHub. If you're talking about when can you expect to be able to do a draft, have it go through the process and.
I was actually thinking of publish. When can I publish one?
Publish work.
Yeah,
as an
I think
RFC.
we're willing to do lots of work beforehand. It's when can it get published?
Next year.
Next year. Okay.
With the possible exception of just straight non-ASCII characters, because like I said, I really want to get at least the documents that we've used for testing out the door.
Any other questions for Heather? Thank you very much.
Do you want to use this for the rest of the session? Greg, where's Greg?
Yeah, Greg does. Greg,
Greg, if you're presenting, you don't sit in the back of the room.
Greg doesn't actually have slides, so we'll see.
Okay.
Let me give you this back. And while Greg is getting situated, I heard somebody ask at the beginning of this if there was materials. Part of the making the Working Group Chairs Forum official on Meet Echo and all of that is we do actually have materials up as part of the materials page now. I think the agenda link is now working. Oh, Allison is shaking her head that they're not there. Well, I know if you go down to materials, they're down there, like on the data tracker left-hand side where it says agenda and the next button down is materials. They're there. I don't think they're properly linked back into the agenda yet, but we made a lot of last-minute requests to fix this, to do, not to fix this, but to make changes. So we are thankful for the changes we've gotten. And still trying to figure out, because this is not really like a working group, and so the way it was designed to fit into data tracker doesn't quite align. So we keep changing the requirements underneath them and saying, oh, well, we really want this shiny thing over here after they've provided us the shiny thing over there. So anyway, so the materials are up there somewhere. You can find them. Go ahead, Greg.
Do you want to put up the web page? Oh, okay. Yeah, so my name is Greg Wood. I've been working on a few things, including trying to get a revamped www.ietf.org sort of front page or front door for the IETF in place. How many people know that there's an effort to make that happen? Excellent. I don't think I beat Heather, but that was pretty good. So I'm going to do a real quick, it's going to be pretty brief, but I'm going to do a real quick recap of how we got to today, because I know folks have heard it before, but I think it's important to remember. Talk a little bit about where things are going, and then answer any questions or take any feedback folks have. So just a long time ago in a galaxy far away, far away, there was a scope of work that was shared with the IETF mailing list. There was input taken, and the scope of work was revised, which led to the actual project plan. Sorry. Russ Housley is the project manager for the project now, after it was kicked off by Joe Hildebrand. And the project, very high level, said a lot of nice things about what ought to be done, but in particular it talked about the fact that this front door needs to work for IETF participants, non-participants, but people who could participate in the IETF, and non-participants for people who will never ever participate in the IETF. So think of managers or policymakers or anything, or folks like that who still need to know what the IETF does and why it's important. So we went out and talked to a lot of folks from those various groups, got input, created a design document out of that, and started implementing it with a vendor that was selected. I'll say in parallel what's happened, I think the data tracker has evolved quite a bit and changed, so we tried to line things up with that. Skipping ahead, last IETF meeting, IETF 98, there was sort of a soft launch preview where we had sort of office hours and took feedback from folks. We adapted the draft site based on that feedback and continued working on it. And just before this meeting started, Russ sent a note to the IETF list saying, hey, you can go take a look at beta.ietf.org, poke around, let us know what you think. It's still work in progress. So we definitely wanted to share it early and get input. And we've gotten some input, some further input. So we'll be taking that into account. It's actually, all the input is useful. So that's where we are. I would say going forward, the idea is to take the input we've gotten so far, do some more testing back with those audiences that don't show up at IETF meetings in particular, make sure that we're sort of on the right track and things are working well, and then hopefully move pretty soon, next couple of months, to production. So I think it's an opportunity. Personally speaking, as a not a direct participant in the IETF process, I think it's an opportunity to make that the IETF site, the www site anyway, work better for folks who don't already know what the IETF is doing. But of course, it needs to work for all the audiences, including current participants and potential participants. So I think that's the quick rundown. I should say on feedback, there are a couple of ways, and Russ in his note mentioned that there's an email alias, I think called webmaster.ietf.org. There's a GitHub issue tracker that we're using to track issues, and people could submit issues there. And so we are tracking that. And there are still office hours during the meeting this week, so Friday morning. I think that was also in Russ's note. But of course, you should feel free to stop me. I won't volunteer Russ, but you can definitely stop me, and I'm happy and would welcome conversations. So so if there are any other questions or comments, I'm happy to tackle those now as well.
Hi, Tim Chan. You probably remember my email.
Hi, Tim.
I think what we're going to have to come to is the realization now that www.ietf.org is basically the place that non-participants will go to find stuff. I kind of accept that it's the way that modern web pages look. I like the fact that it works well in responsive mode on a phone, so it's still quite presentable there. But I think the realization is, as participants, we're going to have to basically, the data tracker will be our landing page. So I think the important thing is to make sure that everything on the data tracker, and particularly the left-hand pane, is captured from the existing IETF homepage, which is where I think a lot of us maybe still go to do common things like submission of drafts, etc. So it's kind of like the corporate front page as opposed to the sort of intranet, which is what the data tracker and the excellent tools page is. I think that's my interpretation of it, and it's kind of okay. I'm sure I'll get used to it. It's just like a female Doctor Who. I'll get used to that as well. So it's all okay. I think it's just a bit, once you've seen something and been familiar with it for so long, it's just a bit of a shock, I think.
Yeah,
it'll be a shock to the doctor as well when he regenerates. So I think that as well.
I'll say I think one of the things we heard for sure at the last IETF meeting was that people came to www.ietf.org, IETF participants came, and what they used was meeting registration and the left-hand set of links. I won't call it navigation because it isn't actually navigation to the www site. It's a set of links to resources that are commonly used. So I don't know if it'll work on that, but if you hit the tools menu item up there, I don't know if that's something you can do. You'll see that there's a drop-down link to some of the commonly used things, right? And if you click on tools itself, it takes you to a page which is still being refined that has essentially a replication of the links that are currently on the left side map. Yeah, I understand. And the scrolling issue, for example, is a really good point. So it's something that's a great example of feedback that we need to address. Thanks.
Hi, Bob Hinden. First of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this. It's a completely thankless job because whatever you do, people will find things to criticize. Good. And go to scroll back. I have one comment, or to the top. Yeah. I hate that picture for the IETF. That's sort of not
Good.
how we do business.
Good, well, we're replacing it.
Great.
Yeah, I'll say that one of the questions has been, so why do you have this here? That's not going, it's not a question, but like this is not the thing that you would have on your front page once you go into production. And maybe a clarification is that we wanted to have something up there that definitely put this site in context about where it is now. It's not the front homepage, so don't think of it as such. Once it goes into production, we'll have images from the hackathon, or people having discussions, or perhaps images relating to current blog posts. There was a recent blog post by, I'm going to forget it, but it was basically about automated calling capabilities for vehicles, and there's a few RFCs that were published, and then the authors of the RFCs wrote a blog post explaining them. So again, keeping in the idea that it's the work of the IETF that's really, really important, but some people need help understanding what that work is.
Hi, Greg. Allison Menken, IETF chair. I also want to thank you. You've been very communicative and very clear to the stakeholders I knew about, including myself. When you put images up, so I've been through a number of corporate type things. I know we're not going to get close to corporate, but will you have a panel of folks who kind of eye test them to make sure that you're aware of different possible reactions of different people's sensitivities and so on? Because I've had a lot of interesting experiences with that not happening in environments.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the plan. It's something that I know Alyssa is interested in, is making sure that there's the opportunity to have these kinds of things sort of reviewed with more eyeballs, and maybe not solve issues, but highlight issues to say, hey, you really should think about that and go talk to that person to figure it out. So yeah, that's definitely part of the plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Greg? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, the next item on the agenda is actually about this particular session. So I had a couple questions for how we wanted to, actually I'm going to stand up so I can see you all. Oh, much better. So what I wanted to know, we used to do tutorials. We did full day, not full day, we did full hour tutorials, and then we migrated to this open forum format. We have covered a number of the fairly obvious topics thus far, and so I'm trying to solicit a little bit of input on where we want to go with this particular forum. I have a couple of topics for next time, but I'm wondering what the best way to solicit input going forward on them is. So the first question I have is, how many people have gone to the Working Group Chairs Wiki recently? Oh, that's better than I expected. So I added an entry all the way down at the bottom of the Working Group Chairs Wiki, which is a pointer to an EduTeam Wiki, which basically is a collection spot for ideas for future topics for the Working Group Chairs Forum. Now, the ones that I currently have in mind for that we're pondering, or that we're probably going to do in the near future, one of them, and it was mostly because we wanted a little bit more time to properly prepare it before this one, is what are the implications of what are the changes, what are the differences between the new IPR RFC and the old one, based on the, I mean, obviously, a number of you have probably seen the blog that have come out. Another one, and she's not in here, so I'm not going to put her on the spot, had to do with interactions with the Secretariat, like what can you, what questions and what can they what do they want to know from you all, and also any questions or comments that you have from them. So my first question is, how many people feel that these forums are efficient and you would like to see them continue? Okay. Okay, that's true. I guess I should start with how many think they should continue. That would probably be a, okay, excellent. And I won't ask the efficient question because they're not feeling very efficient at the moment. So.
Is a valid question, how many people are here because they like the free lunch?
Well, you know, there was one. I know the last ISOC panel that I organized, we did a survey out of that, and I add one of the responses I added was, I'm only here for the free lunch. But people don't tend to answer that very honestly, I'll have to say. I guess I could do that. How many people are here only for the free lunch? I've got to say, if you're here only for the free lunch in beautiful Prague in this rather dark conference room, then there's something wrong. It's beautiful and sunny and there's good food outside. All right, so what I'd like to do is sort of open up the floor for suggestions for future topics, and then also encourage you eventually to go to the wiki. So I would like a brainstorming session on what you all would like to hear or what you would like to discuss. And I think we seem to like the 15 to 20 minute per topic discussion. Oh, but if there's a specific thing that you think we need a full tutorial on, I'm interested in that as well.
This is Barry Lieba, and I'm going to push back on what you just said. I actually liked it when we had one or maybe two topics that filled the time, rather than here's a list of things that we want to chat about for 5 minutes each or 10 minutes each or whatever. I don't have particular suggestions right now for topics, but I will mull that over. But I thought we did really well when we said the topic this time is going to be X. I like that.
Okay.
Robert Sparks, I'm going to agree with Barry for if we continue in the format where we're all sitting in chairs and staring at someone in the front of the room. I would suggest that we consider having this session in the lounge with a bunch of tables and breakouts around topics where smaller groups of us can talk about the smaller topics that we're more interested in.
So something like an open space type of activity. That would be really interesting. And of course, I immediately jumped to the logistics challenges of that, but that's a very interesting idea. I mean, we currently have a lounge. This time we have a lounge that might accommodate that, but we'd have to think about it. So let me do just a general poll of the room then of when we were doing tutorials, people were complaining that some of them were some of them needed to be more hands-on, and that people just didn't want to sit and listen to a presentation for an hour in the middle of the week. So how many would prefer, how many think it's more useful to do like a full hour-long tutorial? Let's do it that way. So then I guess what I would ask is that we get a little more discussion on the working group chairs list about what the topics should be. And I know a couple times ago I asked for help with the co-chair and I didn't get any volunteers. Maybe if I just asked for volunteers to lead topics, that would help. Go ahead, Barry.
I think Spencer was before me if he wants to.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even.
So, Spencer Dawkins, you don't have to make this decision for all future IETFs, right?
No.
You're going to have topics that require an hour, and it's okay for us to do that. But I really like the idea for the working group chairs to be able to have conversations that are more structured than the working group chair beer nights, but not classroom style. I think that, I think what Robert was talking about was somewhere in the middle, and I think that that's a good default if you don't have something that's, like tutorial material.
I kind of like the concept of the open mic some point in there. But go ahead, Barry.
Well, my comment dovetails with what Spencer just said. We don't have, because we pick a topic for the day, doesn't mean it has to be a lecture. And we've had some of the topic for the day things in the past have been more interactive with sort of a brief introduction and then let's talk about it. And that really is the kind I like best. And I like Robert's idea, but I would be loath to tell everybody they have to leave the lounge because the working group chairs are coming in. So.
I agree with the people that are saying that it doesn't have to be all one way or all the other. But I do think we need a little bit more community participation in what the topics are and what the. Go ahead, Robert.
Now, I was busy editing what I was going to say, so I'll jump into a half-formed thought. I guess the way I'd like to skin this is you ask people to brainstorm possible topics. You have alluded a couple of times that tutorials are a rich topic space. Could we get people to come talk about kinds of tutorials, in particular tutorials that aren't about tools? I mean, it's obvious to me just because of where I spend a lot of my volunteer time that having tutorials around tools is something that when a new tool comes around is a dead obvious thing to do. Are there tutorials that we can run on things that aren't tools that would be useful?
I got a topic. Maybe having one be a quick introduction from a few chairs of things that they've done in their working groups to manage their working groups that they found to be particularly effective, and then turn that into a general discussion among the chairs of what sorts of problems I have with my working group, how I've solved them, what's worked and what hasn't. General sort of working group management session.
So I'll add to the list that I asked about. The Thing-to-Thing research group in Chicago tried a set of breakout sessions, which is what inspired the suggestion that I made about how we might approach doing this session. I wonder if having somebody from Thing-to-Thing RG run a description on how to do one of these breakout style sessions.
Ron Gondwana, as a new chair and person new to the IETF, my needs are probably quite different to someone like Barry, who's been here for quite a lot longer. Just to pick on you, Barry, with your position on things. Yeah, for me, certainly understanding more about being a chair and understanding more about the process is something that's really quite valuable. And I wonder whether everyone in the room has the same needs or whether it's worth having different focuses, different years. For my first year, obviously, or second year, right. It's all quite new.
I think there's a couple of different categories. I think there's the new chairs that are trying to glean all the information they can about running a working group. I think there's also reminders and refreshers for existing chairs, things about processes that they might have gotten a little bit slack about or that they might never have actually paid attention to. And then I think the third thing is what Barry's talking about, the sharing how you deal with various issues. What are the kinds of issues you encounter and how do you address them? I think that there's at least 3 categories of things that we could do. Go ahead, Barry.
Riffing on Robert, how many of you as chairs have tried running your working group sessions at least sometimes as a multiple breakouts where people, Ari did. Ari is the only one, it seems. So we have a couple. I think it would be interesting to have a session discussing that and seeing if that would work for more working group sessions rather than our usual model of somebody up at the front of the room reading slides.
Bernie Volz, as one possible suggestion for a topic, it might be to ask the IESG, do they have something that they want to talk to the working group chairs about to help ease their process, or things that they're seeing on a regular basis that would be beneficial for us to be aware of in our reviews and in our work, to advanced documents. So that would be an opportunity for the ISG occasionally to come in and talk to the working group chairs about issues that they're seeing or concerns they might have or areas that they're, going to focus a little bit more on in terms of when they do their reviews of documents.
So yeah, we had the Chicago Thinking RT breakout sessions and just wanted to share some experience on that. So I think a lot of participants found it very useful. It's very different style that we usually run, very lively discussions, etc. Some things you really need, there's good facilitators, good note takers, because those are always, of course, a bit hard to come by. And also the logistics of the room. So you need to be people to have close enough to each other. But all in all, it was a very good experience, and we're planning to take one of those later on in one of the IETFs. Depends, of course, what kind of discussions you're having, but maybe for this kind of discussions we're having here, it could be definitely worth trying. And if people want to discuss in more detail of some of our experiences, we can have a breakout on that someday. Thanks.
Hi, Rich Sauls. I think one thing that we should make explicit in the planning is that we want to grow the leadership pipeline so that people like Barry should probably be bored almost at every one of these lunches, and me half, and me half of them, or maybe none of them, depending on what people like. And other people find something useful out of every single one, and that we should definitely have deliberate repetition, because there are always going to be newcomers.
Yes.
So hi, Natasha Rooney. So just to second the new chair section, I don't know if it should be the whole time, but at least a bit for newbies would be really great. Like I chair 2 groups, but I could still do with some of that little bit. So yeah, some more of that would be fantastic.
Sorry, can I insert myself here? We used to have on the Sunday afternoon in the tutorials, in the more overall tutorial session, we used to have sessions on how to run a working group, how to be more efficient working group chair, things like that, more procedural experience exchange kind of tutorials. We haven't done that in a while because it was kind of replaced by this. But would this be something that we should consider doing again as a tutorial on Sunday afternoon, maybe a bit more structurally than having discussions here?
That's a +1 from me. I don't think it has to be, sorry, Rick Taylor. I don't think it has to be every IETF, because, okay, I could take over as a working group chair, survive 1 or 2 meetings leaning on my co-chair, and then maybe 1 in 3 would seem fairly viable. I imagine there's metrics on how many new chairs have come in, and sort of try and catch that wave every so often would be worthwhile.
So can I ask you a question before you step away? So I think we haven't done one in a very long time, so it'd be worth doing it. But we're doing a much better job now of capturing these and putting them online. And MeetEcho provides nice, they provide nice recordings. They're all up on YouTube. So is there a, I'm wondering where the trade-off with how often we should do them versus, do people, let me ask this, if there was a 1-hour tutorial on how to run a working group video, how many of you think you would actually look at it? Wow, your attention spans are much longer than mine.
Might not pay attention all the way through the 1 hour, but I'd leave it playing.
See, okay.
I mean, there's so many possible topics you can put in. I don't think an hour is that long, actually, for working chairs.
That's true.
Hi, Karen. Al Morton on this topic of the Sunday working group chair tutorial. I remember going to my first one, and I thought it was just a really great up. And the best part was my co-chair, who'd been doing it for about 7 years, came with me. And having some actual chairs there who you could interact with and ask questions of and get down into questions, details. If you haven't, especially if you haven't run a working group yet, it was valuable. And I think in the past when we ran these, we opened it up to prospective working group chairs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So we would absolutely need to do that this time just to get enough numbers to do that. And I think we want to encourage, if we go this way, we want to encourage some number of existing working group chairs to go and then go right from that 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock session right to the newcomers or something like that. I think that would work. Thank you.
Okay.
David Black, just want a quick plus one what Al said.
Oh, to what Al said. Okay, great.
Brian Rosen, I'm going to change the subject. So.
Oh, that's fine.
Right. So I'm going to riff a little bit on this idea of sessions that are breakout, and suggest that a good subject for this thing would be an interactive brainstorming session on alternate ways to run a meeting, so that we would surface ideas like that, like the breakout session, but there might be many other ideas that we could do. And one thing that I would add to that is there isn't any reason it has to take the whole slot, right? You could have 2/3 of the meeting run conventionally and 1/3 of the meeting running in an alternate way. But I think it would be interesting to have this group brainstorm on alternate ways that we could get our work done other than people in the pink box.
I think that's a really good idea. I know it's something the IESG has been talking about, but perhaps it's a conversation that all of the working group chairs should have as well. Go ahead, Niels.
Hi, Niels, HRPC. I have a problem for which I do not have a solution, and that is that the hackathon is growing at a frightening pace, which is a great thing, but it coincides with our newcomers' work. And when Charles asked at the hackathon how many people at the hackathon were first-time IETFers, there was a huge number of hands going up. So that means that we're having the same target group, which is bad. So we might consider doing some stuff maybe other times during the week, maybe during other breaks. I do not know, but conflicts are going to happen, but this seems particularly a problematic one.
Go ahead, Robert.
So Robert Sparks, while people are absorbing that, I've had the idea a few times this week. I've been talking to a few folks about it. I am increasingly of the opinion that what is happening at the hackathon is at least as, if not more important than what is happening in many of the working group sessions. That tells me that we should allocate our time differently. I realize we're getting a little bit out of scope of what the working group chairs should do, but as working group chairs, let's start thinking about how we're using our time across the week. Maybe we should have fewer working group sessions or shorter working group sessions and a bigger chunk of time that is unstructured for people to do hackathons all week long. Shifting gears, in the list of things that we might talk about if we actually had someone come in and give a dedicated in the front of the room, lead a discussion kind of topic, we haven't had anyone yet come to the mic to talk about, well, I'm working in my working group and here is hard thing X that I'm having to deal with. I'll pony up an example hard thing X that I'm just pulling out of a hat. I don't have this problem right now, but sometimes you have to replace working group document editors and the current editors don't want to be replaced. I think maybe having a few sessions on one or two topics like that one so that we can get some shared, at least anecdotal messages about how to healthily get through those situations would be a good use of the time.
Okay, thank you.
Rick Taylor again. Can I just say a +1 for the current format? I actually quite like it. If you look at what we're doing now, we've had a couple of presentations on, quick to the point presentations about a couple of things which are relevant. The website's changing, RFC format's changing. It's kind of stuff we need to know as chairs. And then we've got a good open mic where a lot of good ideas. We're discussing how things can change over time. This to me seems to be working reasonably well. So let's not just throw this out so that we can change something. Actually, it's a bit of a +1 for this format. So.
Ben Campbell, first responding to Robert, IESG is actually actively discussing how we allocate time during the week and are there experiments we can try and that sort of thing. So that's a good thing. The downside of that is apparently we found out today we were also actively discussing that in 2005.
You're welcome.
Then what I actually came to the mic for was talking about
Sunday tutorials for chairs or potential new chairs or that sort of thing. And this is, I think Barry is the one who told me the second hand that we did one of those not too long ago, a couple of years ago, something like that. And there was
several years ago.
Time flies. And at the end of the day, it was asked, okay, how many of you are actually interested in being chairs? And no one's raised their hand. Now, I don't know if that means that we scared them. I think more likely, and this ties in now with the conflict with the various coding events, is that I think a lot of people didn't know they needed to come early on Sunday. And people make their travel arrangements months in advance for this sort of thing. And if they find out a few weeks in advance that there's going to be a tutorial they care about, they may not be able to change those plans at that time. So if that sort of thing could be announced well in advance when we plan to do it, perhaps with some outreach to specifically targeted people, that would probably be helpful. On the other hand, the potential conflicts with weekend time might suggest we do it some other time in the week anyway.
Right.
Yeah, what Ben was talking about was specifically the tutorial I did on shepherding, document shepherding. And I think it might have been the last Prague meeting. But yeah, I asked people in the room how many of you are or will be document shepherds, and no one raised their hand. So I don't know who was in there and why. And they were engaged and interested, but they weren't the people I was hoping to get in there.
All right. Okay.
Okay, a few comments. First, on the combining breakouts and plenary style, that usually works actually pretty well. Usually, if you want to have breakouts, you want to start with plenary and end with plenary. First to set the stage, and in the end to wrap up across all the different breakouts. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Then on the comment of getting best practices, how to handle hard situations, sounds very good. I think one common theme across many working groups, how to get stuff working faster, because of various reasons, kind of, okay, if this, then do that, and here's a few ways to do that. And then on the time allocations, the weekend before the IETF is getting extremely crowded. I don't have a solution for that, except for maybe for Singapore, Tingling RC is going to start on Friday before the IETF. Sorry about that. But yeah, maybe we want to work on some guidelines on like how do we actually make the weekend also work better.
Okay, thank you. Spencer?
Spencer Dawkins. So we probably need a section of this meeting where people can stand up and say, I agree with Robert Sparks. But he may have been thinking this all by himself, but he talked about the lounge thing, and we've talked about the hard problem thing. And I'm thinking that the lounge with breakout sections based on a topic, those two things would work together really well. Yeah. So I mean, the ISG, as we said, the ISG is thinking about this, and we're doing experiments almost every IETF cycle, if you're paying attention. So that this is something that matters a lot to us, and we really appreciate the opportunity to listen to 100 people who have, 20 times as many brain cells as we do, just mathematically, because coming up with things that will work for the community is a hard problem.
Right. Charles?
Yeah, hi. Charles Eckel. Robert also mentioned about the hackathon and thoughts about that. And when we first brought that, it was certainly an experiment, right? And just given some leeway to do it. And now people are getting used to it, but it is growing. And not only does it eat up people's time, but it also costs more to run it. So just to feed people. So it is something that I'm glad, Robert mentioned it and that people will start thinking about it. I've also worked with the Secretariat a bit. We thought about ways we could address this. And just like the hackathon was an experiment the first time we did it, we were thinking of doing something very light touch where people could, much like they asked for a side room, to be scheduled, they could ask for space where their team could work on coding stuff. Doesn't have to be specifically hackathon, but really not so much about getting the space, but more about getting people's calendars and their times synced up, just to see if that was helpful and if there was demand for it. So that is some type of experiment we're thinking of doing, if you have thoughts about it, come see me. I'm happy to hear what you think might make it work better, so that, when we do the experiment, at least has a chance of succeeding.
Okay, excellent. And Barry,
This
last
is Barry.
question.
This isn't really it's a little bit of a stray, but talking about alternative ways to run your working group sessions, how many of you know that when you request a session, you can ask for an alternative U-shaped room layout? Okay, most of you do know. So then I guess they're going to try it again. There are none that way this time because there weren't enough requests, but they're going to try it again in Singapore. Really think about whether your working group could benefit from that kind of layout to generate more discussion and less presentation.
Right. All right. So we have 6 minutes. So last sprints to the queue.
We did not get loads of comments from participants about the U-shaped experiment last time. Since we're thinking about doing that, fixing the stuff we heard about last time, if there was stuff that was broken last time that you thought about but haven't said, or even ask your working groups if they were in one of those rooms, please tell us, because we would like to be smarter rather than dumber.
And following up on that one, there were some weird dynamics in that U-shaped room with questions with people's backs and chairs not facing the groups and all sorts of stuff that was weird. So we could probably use the room well, but let's figure out how to use it best.
Yeah.
I would like to also ask advice from other working group chairs on scheduling conflicts and when to ask for rescheduling and what is the best approach for that. So now we're Friday morning against Quick. It's going to be fun. But what, where, and how should you be using the rescheduling and doing the conflicts? And probably people have some advice and guidance on that.
Let's see.
This U-shaped room thing, how many chairs would be in that room? So I've got 150 people that come into my working group. Can I have a U-shaped room with 150 people in it?
Well, maybe yours isn't the best working.
The idea is that you have a U-shaped arrangement for some people you figure that that's where the most active participants will tend to sit. And then there'll be chairs around that other people can sit. And it might not work for your working group. I don't know.
All right. So we have 4 minutes left. This has been a very helpful conversation. I will post a note to the working group chairs mailing list. Like I said, I've set up a wiki page where I'm going to try and curate ideas for sessions going forward and any other comments that you have. And so that we can also on that same page is a list of tutorials. We had a tutorial this time. Generally we have obviously the newcomers tutorial. We have tutorials that are about IETF process and tools. And we have ones that are about, new technologies that are in the IETF, like the quick one we had last time, DNS privacy. And we also have tutorials about technology that's coming from outside of the IETF. And this time we had a tutorial that was requested by a group of people that wanted to get better exposure to something that they want to bring into the IETF. And that was the TEEP tutorial. And we obviously have a limited number of resources and slots that we can put tutorials in. But any thoughts about, I don't want to think in tutorials just in terms of process and tools and that kind of thing. I think we also have an opportunity to introduce new technologies or to better socialize technologies that or technical concepts that we're working on ourselves. So I strongly encourage people to either mail the working group chairs mailing list or to contribute to the wiki, and the dialogue will continue. We'll see what we'll do next time. I really like the small concept idea of at least once doing the round table one. I think that would be really interesting to try. Don't forget to take your lunches and take your bags, your garbage, your groceries, and clear the room for the next group. Thank you.